This is the skills training program brought to you by Mikaela Vanderzee, Joshua Paleogolou, and David Hally, aka JDM Productions.
Oh, geez. Oh, beautiful dunk. See, that's not a finger roll. That's what you call it. Finger roll. You gotta sing it like that, man. My daddy told me that before he left the family.
Within this training program, we will be breaking down and assessing the key aspects of a layup in the sport of basketball and how to advance the expected cognitive stage learner through to the associative stage and autonomous stages of learning. This learning will be carried out over a 4-week period. The basketball layup is a closed skill in training, although can also be considered an open skill. It involves gross movements produced by the arms and legs of the body. Drills, for example dribbling, can be used to control the degrees of freedom of these limbs. When assessing the skill with Gentile's two-dimensional taxonomy, we find that when considering the environmental context, the basketball layup has only regulatory conditions that are both stationary and in motion and do not vary from trial to trial. These include the height of the ring and backboard, the court itself, and the ball. The basketball layup involves the body orientation continually changing during transportation in each stage of the skill, even without the defender. The ball is also continually changing position as it transitions from dribbling into the two steps and then into the shot. Depending on the sport and variables such as if the subject has had previous exposure to other sports, either positive or negative transfer may occur. Netball can potentially be classified as a negative transfer due to no use of skills such as the two steps and use of the backboard. Additionally, netball also uses a slightly different shooting technique which can impede the teaching of the gooseneck technique. AFL football has the ability to positively transfer into basketball due to the similarity in movement patterns in nature with the footwork used in skills such as kicking the ball and the sudden change of directions. The following components are the key fundamentals in a basketball layup. Controlling the ball while in motion is a vital part in setting up the shot. Coordination is required for the learner to correctly time the transition of dribbling into the two steps. In addition to timing, control of the ball while dribbling into the two steps is important to ensure there are no degrees of freedom problems. Placement of the ball will determine your accuracy in the shot. The gooseneck technique involves extension of the elbow and flexion of the wrist. It is a common technique adopted for the release of the ball when shooting as it assists with the ball being shot accurately into the basket. For measuring performance, a wide range of both qualitative and quantitative techniques could be used throughout assessing the skill, such as counting how many baskets were made and counting the gross errors that occur in each stage of learning, how well executed the gooseneck technique was, or how much control the client has over the ball while dribbling. The skills training program has a duration of 4 weeks. All 4 weeks will be distributed practice broken up into 3 30-minute sessions per week, allowing the exercises to be broken up for the client to have a higher rate of retention. Practice of this program has been designed based on the findings of Badley and Longman 1978, that people learn skills better in short and more frequent sessions. According to Fitz's model, there are 3 stages of learning that occur. The first stage is the cognitive stage, a person new to the skill who has little to no muscle memory or practice with the given task. They require frequent feedback in the early stages of learning the skill and gradually less as the skill becomes more acquired to them. An example of a cognitive learner is David. As you can see in the video, he performs numerous gross errors with his shot, including a lack of extension at the elbow and not aiming at the top corner of the backboard. As the learner begins to progress into the associative stage of the skill, errors and results become more apparent to them and less feedback is required. During an in-game situation, the skill becomes open once environmental factors are introduced. These can include the presence of a defender either in front or chasing down the player on offense. The learner modifies or adapts their movement pattern from the cognitive stage, making it smoother and more fluent. During this stage, the participants will begin to understand how the various components of the skill are interrelated. Furthermore, the participants will begin to understand their internal feedback and adjust their movements accordingly. A key component which should first be understood by the coach is style in which the participant learns most effectively. The learning style used here is physical, with the participant practicing the gooseneck technique repetitively. It is important to note that knowledge of performance should be initially given in order to ensure correct technique is taught at a fundamental level. As the participant progresses through the exercise, this feedback is phased out. The first key aspect of the layup that needs to be addressed is the gooseneck technique. Stated by Ozaki et al. 2007, essentially this is the follow-through after the ball is released with full elbow extension and wrist flexion. The next key aspect that should be taught is the positioning of the ball off the backboard. Cues such as top corner and backboard should be exercised to remind the learner of prior information that was received during the verbal teaching of the skill. A retention measure at the beginning of the lesson could be how many baskets are made out of a given number of attempts. Assessing what aspects of the technique have been lost in the period since the last session can provide the coach with a knowledge of performance of how well the learner is progressing with the skill. The first lesson in week 2 should begin with testing the learner's retention of the skills learnt in the previous week in order to determine how much information has been lost. This will conclude whether various parts of the skill need to be retaught or clarified. The 2 steps leading into the release of the ball is a key component to the overall action which must be taught effectively. A wide range of teaching techniques can be taught for this particular skill, such as physical demonstration and varying methods of terminal augmented feedback. Verbal cues such as right-left could be used to remind the learner of the correct footwork sequence. A cognitive stage learner will usually perform gross errors such as putting the wrong foot down first, taking too many steps, or beginning too far away from the basket. Week 3 should begin with qualitative and quantitative retention measures from the skill learnt in the previous week. Dribbling of the ball is the next component to be taught. In order to teach a skill that requires high levels of talent and has multiple variations, it is best to use multiple exercises in order to solidify understanding and muscle memory of the concept. As a result, block practice is the most effective way to teach the client. The block practice exercises selected in this case is the dribble drill known as high-low, which is used by elite basketball athletes such as Chris Paul and Derrick Rose. In order to counteract the downfalls of block practice, such as the loss of interest, it is important that multiple types of drills are implemented throughout a training session in order to provide variety. Otherwise, there will be a rigid training approach. Another drill, which can be used to consolidate dribbling skill, is the bouncing of a ball while walking or running through a set of objects. This activity also provides both quantitative and qualitative retention test measures, as time can be measured to see how fast the client can work through the drill, and also assessing how much control they have while performing, in contrast to when it was attempted in a previous session. Once the previous skills have been learnt and retained with a reasonable level of success, the client can begin to mesh the different components together to perform a skill in a whole practice method. The benefit of this whole practice method after the individual skill has been learnt is that the skill as a whole will come together with less errors and at a faster rate. Furthermore, with phasing out of the cognitive stage of learning and transitioning into the associative stage, a higher amount of variability and complexity can be introduced over the week, including approaching the layup from a narrower angle, using versatile methods of releasing the ball such as the underarm release, attacking the basket from the opposite side, increasing time spent in the air to simulate an in-game situation, and incorporating an opponent while completing the layup. Incorporating a defender whilst the skill is performed intends to increase the stress levels and forces them to execute the layup at a higher level. The 4 key aspects that will be highlighted in the skills training program are dribbling of the ball, the beginning for the 2 steps and takeoff, placement of the ball on the backboard, and the follow-through on the release of the shot using the gooseneck technique.